Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Ubisoft's much-loved franchise returns. A huge open world. Exhilarating combat. Brooding poses. Famous actors. Microtransactions. Gun porn. Interface spam. Herbalism. More microtransactions. Disconnects. Clunky dialogue.
Cryptocurrency, I think they call it.
Long, repetitive cutscenes. A time-gated in-game shop.
Take as long as you need.
Promotion by Lil Wayne.
What the?
The dude who spaffs in girls' eyes.
Balls. Who's balls?
That guy. What the actual fuck? Welcome to Ghost Recon Breakpoint, the game that very literally represents Ubisoft's real core values. I should qualify up front for all the die-hard Ghost Recon fans that Breakpoint is my first, and possibly last, experience of this franchise. So if you have played Ghost Recon for years, please keep this in mind and forgive me my trespasses against your franchise, as I will forgive your trespasses against mine. This said, I might be new to Ghost Recon, but I am no stranger to the abuses of Ubisoft and have covered many of their other games before, such as Far Cry, whatever, and both Division 1 and 2. These should be familiar to many Breakpoint players, because they stole half the fucking assets and wedged them into this fucking monstrosity. Ghost Recon Breakpoint is probably the shittest game I've ever had fun playing. It's fucking tragic, but somehow manages to have some redeeming qualities. This said, it does not have enough redeeming qualities to justify charging players for the privilege of playing. Or should I say, logging in. Or should I say, attempting to log in, and attempting to not get disconnected. Because, you know, in a single player game, having to log in and play online makes total sense, right? It certainly makes more sense than waiting 60 seconds for the game to download the data for the fucking vendor every time you click on it. So what is Ghost Recon Breakpoint? It's a third-person, tactical, single-player co-op and PvP, pay-to-win, semi-looter shooter which combines game assets, mechanics and ideas shredded from several other Ubisoft titles, all gaffer-taped together to create a cynical and barely functional shit pie of a mess that retails at the price point of a premium AAA title, whilst being stuffed with so much pay-to-win content you would be forgiven for thinking this was a free-to-play mobile game. You pay a lot of money for Breakpoint, sign a contract relinquishing your right to a refund, spend several hours trying to log in to the online services, and then run around an island in an increasing state of depression as you realise you have just been suckered into buying yet another Ubisoft games-as-a-service bucket of broken dreams, in-game purchases, and salty tears. Breakpoint is following the relentless flow of the AAA video game trends. It's an open world game with RPG elements. It has a class system, social functionality, levelling up system, an omnipresent in-game store, and sports always online DRM. Online DRM is a posh way of saying the game is always online, so that Ubisoft can delay the game being pirated for about 3 fucking days at the trivial cost of making our lives miserable forever. Playing this game, you see visible and obvious influences from a range of other online games. Far Cry, The Division, World of Warcraft, Scum, and Red Dead Redemption. I'm not sure I found an original aspect to the game, but it does succeed in some ways of plagiarising everything quite well. Right down to the wizardry of magical firearms with magical secondary effects that have more to do with sorcery than science. At a time when the industry is suffering from a crisis of perception and many large publishers like EA, Bethesda and Activision are coming under concerted enemy fire for blatant greed, declining quality and turning their products into psychologically predatory mechanisms for extracting money out of the wallets of parents, Ubisoft decided to throw caution to the wind and try and out-douche everyone. It's as if Ubisoft looked at what Bethesda did with Fallout 76 and mistakenly came to the conclusion that it was some kind of dickhead competition to see who could self-destruct their company brand the fastest. Breakpoint is by no means as bad as Fallout 76. I mean, it actually fucking runs sometimes. And it's much less boring. However, the most fascinating aspect of Breakpoint is that it represents a window of true nature on Ubisoft as a corporation. In fact, that is its defining characteristic. Breakpoint perfectly illuminates the differences between what Ubisoft claims to be and what it really is all about. This game stars and is promoted by Jon Bernthal and bizarrely features a front and centre advertising campaign involving the mumble rapper Lil Wayne. I'm more of an old school lyrical rap fan myself, but this preference aside, Breakpoint represents factual, transparent and high profile evidence for the following business analytical assertion. Ubisoft, as a corporation on every fundamental level, is completely full of shit. I've known this for a long while, having studied their handling of the live service shit show that is The Division, but what is truly fascinating is how Breakpoint has made Ubisoft's true nature so transparent. Ubisoft, a corporation that relentlessly bangs on about inclusivity, diversity and caring about the players, released this game? A half-baked shitty asset flip that trashed the franchise, betrayed the players, that has so many microtransactions targeting children that you can literally buy everything in the game? And just to double down on the shit show, they hired the much-loved Jon Bernthal to get involved, no doubt trashing his credibility, and then chucked a huge pile of money at Lil Wayne to be their main promotional partner. Given Ubisoft's professed commitment to equality and diversity, it is initially perplexing that they would get into bed with a promotional partner most famous for discussing pussy, defecation, bitches, and deliberately ejaculating into girls' eyeballs without their consent. But when you really think about it, it's not perplexing at all. Breakpoint is brilliant because it demonstrates that Ubisoft doesn't really have any commitment to its self-professed values. I'm sure its equality and diversity portfolio generates big tax breaks, and it's great for public relations, but when it really comes down to business, Ubisoft is all about the money. And if paying someone who makes records about raping housewives will shift units, then that is perfectly fine with Yves Guillemot. I'm not making any moral judgment about Lil Wayne or casting criticism on his music. I'm sure he's a positively charming fellow. If you like his music, then more power to you. Just make sure you take some eyewash into the dressing room. I'm not judging his music, I'm judging Ubisofts' hypocrisy. I think Frankie Boyle is as funny as fuck, but I would question the integrity of a nursery school that hired him as a birthday party entertainer. I think Woody Allen has made some superb movies, but I would be fucking confused if he became the face of an incest and sexual assault survivors charity. Just like I am a bit confused that Ubisoft promotes itself as a corporation that values its players and promotes diversity and female empowerment, and then releases an unfinished game entirely structured around microtransactions, promoted by a dude obsessed with bitches, pussy, and ejaculating in girls' faces. My point here is that Ubisoft talks the talk of inclusivity and positivity, but frankly, I think they would hire Joseph fucking Fritzl as a promotional partner if he would boost sales. Not that I'm judging Joseph Fritzl either. Sure, he lacks certain basic parenting skills, but I don't think anyone would dispute that his DIY skills are superb. I am not making any kind of moral or critical judgment about Lil Wayne. Frankly, I'm not in a position to make a moral judgment about anyone. He has made the music he needed to make in order to be successful. There is no shame in this. He is not a man without some merit, and I'm sure some consider him to have done fine works. This said, whether you love him or hate him is not the issue here. Although I did hear from an insider source that he's an arsehole to work for, never tips the staff, and is rude as fuck to the people around him. However, the issue here is that he sings about murder, fucking bitches, and spaffing in women's eyes. And I'm not convinced that this is consistent with the claimed values and virtues of Ubisoft, who post interviews about inclusivity on its website and then hires a promotional partner who has made a career based on lyrics about murder and kidnapping. So what is the basic premise in Breakpoint? In Ghost Recon Breakpoint, you play the part of an idiot, a complete fucking bellend who didn't do enough research before buying a video game. You find yourself injured and stranded on Microtransaction Island, where you have to pretend you're cut off and alone for the 4 minutes it takes you to stumble into the giant social hub, full of all the other fucking idiots, wearing all sorts of ridiculous cosmetic microtransaction outfits. Your goal is to try and level up, find some gear that isn't shit, endure the painfully slow grind without giving in to temptation and getting out your mum's credit card while she's sleeping off the booze and just buying everything in the game, before turning it off and then installing your free copy of Destiny 2 and begrudgingly realising perhaps you should have done this in the first fucking place. Some of the initial premise and narrative is on point. It might sound fanciful, but think about it. Some super rich tech billionaire sets up his own private island techno-state with robot drones and its own currency and society. This is so close to reality it hurts. Every single aspect of this has happened, with the only distinction being that it's not all been done by the same individuals or corporations, and in the same locations. And with the notable exception that the billionaire entrepreneur who is most skilled at building Skynet's robo-drone killer army is more interested in making flamethrowers, space colonisation, and ruining the lives of rescue divers by paying criminals to tell everyone in their town that they are fucking pedos. However, the premise all gets very, very silly within minutes of starting the game. You're part of an elite team of operators, bonded by blood, for approximately 90 seconds, when suddenly half of your besties turn out to be fuckbags, betray you, and you're left stranded and completely alone. Just like the other hundreds of players on your server, who are isolated and alone, who you meet about 2 minutes later in a giant social hub, where people are running around with pink gunskins and those fucking annoying ghillie trousers. And for the record, ghillie suits don't work as camouflage if you only wear the fucking trousers. Well, you could possibly make it work, but only if you did fucking headstands in a bush. Not that any of this really matters much in this game. It's a video game with Recon in the title, where stealth is a waste of fucking time and you are better off wading in with a short to medium range weapon and going full Doom on everyone's arse. So what about the functionality? Right out of the box, this game was an unstable pile of fuck. I spent most of the first hour just trying to start up the fucking thing. I kept getting insufficient resource errors, hang freezes, warnings saying unable to sync cloud saves. Then I finally started up the game, got through the cutscene, and the game crashed to desktop. One time, when it bombed out, my PC remained in a state of frenzy, with my read-write activity on my hard drives at close to 100% for 10 minutes. Like someone was remotely accessing my PC. Christ, someone at Ubisoft really wants to browse my porn folders. God knows why. My porn collection is relatively mundane. Mostly it's just a collection of saucy pictures of Helena Bonham Carter from that movie where she wore all those sexy outfits. Planet of the Apes. It eventually got better over several days. I'm assuming due to hotfixes because they push this shit out of the door with insufficient testing these days, but initially the stability issues were crushing. It also caused the weirdest, most terminal crash I've ever had under this operating system. It's no wonder that Ubisoft has a disclaimer in its end-user license agreement as standard now, stating that they will not be responsible for any damage they do to your equipment. Bastards. The control scheme is so retardedly overcomplicated, it makes a Battlefield control screen look simpler than Pong. Seriously, between boot-up crashes and the key-binding fucktardery, my first 90 minutes of this game was wasted. I had only managed to heal myself, by accident, and go prone and cover myself in camouflage, by accident, and abuse a friendly corpse, albeit deliberately. When I inverted my mouse Y-axis, the dumb-ass piece of shit, crapped-out, half-baked, unfinished pile of fucking arse crumble decided to invert my fucking mouse wheel too. Perhaps the game was just programmed to squeeze out every last opportunity to make my life just that little bit more miserable. It would certainly explain the plot. The in-game movement and interactions is a fucking farce. You can jump over certain things and not others, get stuck on ground terrain for no obvious reason, and sometimes have to hit the climb button to get over a step. There are micro pauses between certain animations, like getting onto and then climbing up a ladder. The whole fucking game feels like it was designed to obstruct your fluid movement. It feels like all the internal environmental rule modelling was not quite finished and polished. Unless you hit certain invisible requirements and parameters perfectly, sometimes stuff just doesn't quite work. There is a conspicuous absence of mouse over information, or even any information in the store. Looking at the vehicles, I couldn't see any clear stats, but you could see some other information once you'd bought the item. It's frankly a little bit sad that there are clear indications of project work, that they simply didn't get time to finish before release. Another issue with information is the always online server-based bullshit. Sometimes my game environment simply was not being kept up to date by the server. I would spot enemies nearby and they would flag as non-hostile for a while. If a lot of shit was going on, resources were not updated on my minimap. Sometimes it just frankly felt like the server/online services had gone for a quick fucking piss break and didn't update certain info precisely on time. I can't speak for all the vehicle weapons, but the LC4 coercion weapon sight was misaligned. The grenade launcher was aiming at the absolute top pixel of the reticule and not the scaled sight reticule itself. This is a basic failure or complete absence of testing. A few days later the sight had a different alignment, so what the fuck is going on? Oh yeah, and the doors don't close properly. The glass is in the right place, but the door itself is slightly on the piss, off at a weird angle. I think this got patched out later. Time will tell. I'm sure some of this stuff is being routinely patched on the fly, but even so, surely they can test this shit before launch. Just kidding, Ubisoft doesn't really test stuff anymore. I was constantly being bombed straight out of the game. Constantly. And because the game is an almighty pile of fuck live service, always online, always spying on you, always monitoring you to hassle you to visit the microtransaction store piece of crap, when it does kick you out every 20 minutes, it takes about 5 minutes to get back into the game. In fact, that's possibly a bonus. Perhaps the servers have reached peak operational speed and become self-aware, and realised humanity is better off with nobody playing this game. And the new self-conscious AI is trying to help us by kicking us all the fuck out of the game as fast as it can. Perhaps we should be thanking the fucking servers. Then again, perhaps we should be afraid, because if that AI is smart enough, it's going to take one look at the in-game microtransactions, then start interrogating the servers at Ubisoft Massive, see the full extent of their pedo-cash kiddie gambling operation, and quickly come to the conclusion that humans need to be wiped out. Frankly, given the state of modern predatory gambling mechanics, perhaps this is an acceptable trade-off. The interface is puzzling. I mean, it's literally a puzzle. It's the least intuitive interface I've ever seen. And just for good measure, they added some free fuck around, just because Ubisoft. When pinning tasks, you can't just automatically put the task in the next slot down, or even do this with the mouse. You need to use the keyboard, cursor keys, just to select an empty slot, because obviously this game wasn't fucking you around enough already. And then of course, there was the issue of the relentless interface spam. Things are constantly popping up on your screen, and because you will disconnect repeatedly and the cloud files won't sync reliably, and or the game is just unfinished, frequently the game will have no memory that it's already informed you of something 8 fucking times already. And next time you log in, it tells you another few times, just for good measure. You know that film, Memento, about the guy with no memory that keeps forgetting things he knows already? This is the opposite. This is like having a perfect memory, but still having to be told the same shit over and over again. It's the anti-Memento. Between the quest spam and that annoying flashing icon in the corner of the screen encouraging you to hook up with your friends in the social tab, I can honestly say it's the first time I played a single player video game and still felt like my privacy was being violated and I was being constantly harassed. In fact, that's it exactly. The in-game interface harasses you. Key binding is a horrific fucking chore on PC. You will just have to nut up and accept the fact that all the time you are playing this game you will routinely be finding things you just can't do without going into the settings and yet again rebinding or unbinding a double fucking keybind. I'm particularly fuming at this because there are things that could have been optimised here but they didn't bother. When I get to an automatic mortar and need to deactivate it, why doesn't the interact key do it? Why do I need an entirely separate interact to specifically diffuse mortars key? I mean, they fucking did that with the power generators and sabotage. I'll tell you why. Because somebody copy and pasted all the possible game actions and interactions and then slapped them into the controls binds page without optimizing much of anything. Because they didn't have the fucking time or resources to do it properly. Because this is a live service game. So now you will regularly find you have 5 or 6 buttons doing kind of the same thing, only in different specific circumstances. Because Ubisoft failed. I'm not sure if the key binding is such a right royal fuck up in the other Ghost Recon games, or whether the whole option to use press, hold or double tap is a workaround for all the double binding. Because let's face it, there are probably more things to bind than keys to bind to. But regardless, whether it's unique to Breakpoint or a legacy of the franchise, I think it's shit. It's a very shit way to do it. And they should have paid the cash to get some people in at the weekend to square this shit away properly. Seriously, I couldn't use binoculars for days, and I had to watch a YouTube video. A video with hundreds of comments from people just like me saying, "Thank fuck you explained how to do this." I'm in a video game where I have to watch fucking YouTube guides to use binoculars. Overall, the interface is a labyrinthine monstrosity, and anyone playing this game will have to be philosophical and resign themselves to the depressing reality that there are abilities and items in this game that they may well never use because they simply won't have enough time to research how to assign, deploy and hotkey them. Simply put, anyone who invests the required time to master the interface probably won't have enough time to play the game as well. Then, of course, there are the small design flourishes in this game where one design team came up with a great idea, but because of bad management and rushed implementation, ended up creating such high levels of douche fuckery that it's noteworthy. The most aggravating example being the kid in the base of operations. Yeah, I said it. Someone thought it would be funny having a kid playing with a toy plane, making mouth fart plane noises. Then someone else came along and decided to put him next to the shop. End result, every time you use the shop you're subjected to the psychological association of kiddie mouth fart plane noises in your fucking ear, whilst being insulted by the worst monetization in a video game since Star Wars Battlefront 2. Join the dots, guys. Test this shit before you release it. Why would anyone want to listen to that fucking noise every time they use the shop? On the positive side, I thought it was at least a nice touch that you can screw your suppressor on and off in game without going to the loadout screen. Same with the dual sight. Nicely done. It should really burn your hand though if you've been drilling 200 rounds through the weapon. But I'll let them off because I like that mechanic, even though there is technically no reason to take the suppressor off. Also, it was frankly a relief to see a game that auto-loots and gets rid of all that fuckery. Just run over the location and your character hoovers up everything automatically. Marvellous. So yes, it's not all bad news with Ghost Recon Breakpoint. If any of your friends ask you if the game has any positive or redeeming points, you can at least turn around, look them straight in the eye and reply, "It's got auto-loot." That's got to count for something, right? Monetization. It goes without saying that Breakpoint is the most objectively ridiculous microtransaction regime that Ubisoft has ever had the audacity to pull on its loyal customers. I could spare you a lot of the details by just saying that everything in the game is for sale. Sure, Ubisoft has backpedaled on some of the bullshit, falsely claimed it was an accident or some shit, and been caught out lying about what happened, and temporarily withdrawn some of the time saver bullshit. But let's not fuck around. You can pretty much ace this game with just your credit card, and at one point just buy skill points, weapons and XP boosters, effectively meaning that most of the game that you bought to play can be bought in the in-game store at the start. A co-conspirator of mine, Zoofishing, suggested a rather intriguing and disturbing idea. I have no way to test or prove this, but once the idea was suggested to me, it made such perfect sense that if it wasn't done here, it's certainly a tactic that either is or will be used in other games. They used the beta as a way to measure customer preference and tweak the in-game store prices. They held an open beta, gave everyone lots of credits to spend on microtransactions, monitored what people spent their money on, and before releasing the final game, adjusted the prices, making the most desirable toys and costumes more expensive. I don't have the data to evaluate this allegation scientifically, and I can't say that's what happened, even if it is incredibly plausible. But if they're not doing this already, they damn well will. They've done worse. Kinda ironic really, because it would represent the exact opposite of good customer service. Depriving the customer of the thing they want the most, and making them pay extra for it. But then again, that is one of the core philosophies behind games as a fucking service. The microtransactions are basically terrible. I don't buy their bullshit excuses about time savers being put in the game by accident. The cash grind is too slow considering the amount of crap in that shop. It took me a very long time to earn the money for the one ground vehicle and one helicopter I wanted, and there is a shop full of them, and a ton of other vehicles besides. This game was designed to put most of the stuff out of your reach and encourage you to spend real money on hurrying up the process. I can't put it more simpler than this. All the loot in this game is for sale, and so is your dignity. So what's my evaluation of Ghost Recon Breakpoint? There is no escaping the obvious fucking moronic plot hole. You find yourself stranded and alone, and within a few quests, you stumble through a tunnel and find yourself in a giant online jungle shopping mall. I was literally just starting to get into this game and thinking to myself, oh no, I'm actually starting to enjoy this. Then bang! I'm immediately jolted out of the immersion, standing in the middle of a giant monetised online social hub shithole. I have fucktards walking past me wearing stupid cosmetic outfits, and I'm seeing names above people's heads like Spaff Monkey 2002 and Madolf Hitler. I installed the game, spent ages fucking around with IT issues, finally managed to stay online long enough to start the main plotline, and the first significant thing that happens is that I faceplant into an online shop. GG Ubisoft. Very fucking subtle. The character modelling is not good. It looks kinda okay out in the world, but in the base of operations, yeah, I said it, your character seems to have a strange, slightly fragile gait, like he's a little bit lame or something, and your body seems to glide across the ground, slightly out of sync with the walking animations. A bit like a 4-year-old trying to make a puppet look like it's walking. Some of the poses are also totally overcooking the ham. The cocked wrist, operator as all fuck at the ready poses are straight out of the kind of private military contractor YouTube videos only watched by civilian pricks like me late at night and scoffed at by real combatants. You know the look, it looks as cool as fuck to a knob-end non-combatant, but it's the sort of action poses that will generate sniggers and giggles if you behaved like that at a real firing range. Straight out of the gate you will notice the obtuse, looter-shooterish mechanics. Overall, it's fairly logical when you get used to it, but given its appeal to semi-realism, it was kind of funny at the start. Headshotting 4 guys holding assault rifles, then looting them and getting, you guessed it, pistol ammunition. Did their guns just conveniently all fall down gopher holes? The enemy AI is absolutely fucking tragic. And I mean you can camp behind a crate, fire your gun in the air to get their attention, and then clear the entire base by shooting every single enemy dumbfuck one fucktard at a time as the NPCs come to the same spot to investigate. Look, I have zero fucking military training, but if I was one of the 30 guys defending a base and I was investigating gunfire and I walked around a corner and saw 29 fucking dead bodies in a pile on the same spot, I might decide not to be the 30th cunt in a row to walk around that crate and get popped in the fucking noggin. It might just occur to me to walk around the other way. Just saying. The game is obsessed with drones. Apparently drones can fly for miles, spot everything with complex artificial intelligence, carry unlimited ammunition, and somehow have the smarts to tell the difference between the enemies and the friendly targets. Personally, I think they're all enemies. Seriously, corrupt mercs or narcissistic Silicon Valley cult members? You decide. Let's get one thing straight right now though. Drones are shit. I bought a little drone and it was rubbish. It could only fly for a few minutes before the batteries ran out, and the last time I flew it, the rotors clipped the wall, it bounced through the door, hit the lampshade, bounced into the bathroom, ricocheted off the bathroom mirror, and landed in a fucking toilet bowl. I can say from personal empirical testing, drones are only effective weapons if you need something that will reliably home in on a fucking toilet and then go for a fucking swim. Unless of course you're talking about one of these bad boys. Although you can't buy these on the internet, sadly. And fuck knows I've tried. The relentless information dump on the player is a disorganised fuck pie of prompts, warnings and pop-ups. The tiresome reminders about your social tab is like being nagged by your fucking mum to go outside and play with your friends when she's just trying to get rid of you in a hurry so she can fuck the gardener. In this case, it's Ubisoft trying to get you and your mates to see each other's cosmetic clothing items and use the Microtransactions store, so they can fuck your wallet. Ubisoft wants to fuck your wallet. That's what this is. That's what this game should be called. Ghost Recon, Ubisoft wants to fuck your wallet. Because that's why they're pushing all players towards co-op and social interactions with flashing fucking amber icons all day long. The game's stability and performance was a fucking joke, and I don't just mean substandard to an unacceptable degree, I mean it was a fucking joke by Ubisoft's normal standards. And they are industry leaders in releasing appallingly shabby games. It's shameful that they would release this game in such a state, and that is coming from someone who has endured 12 rounds in the ring with both Division games. Christ, just the other day some mini-patch entirely broke the game for someone I know by overwriting a conflict they had already fixed. Needless to say, Ubisoft's entirely dreadful customer support hasn't even got back to them yet. I'm not the first person to comment that games like Breakpoint should be a hard lesson to us all. The statement, if you don't like microtransactions then just don't buy them, is a fucking moronic and naive response. This is propaganda spread by publishers. It should be, if you don't like microtransactions, then just don't complain, and in the next release there will be more of them microtransactions and less fucking game. Breakpoint is what happens when you don't push back against greedy, lazy and deceitful publishers. They break your favourite franchise. They release a half-finished crippled dick of a game where it's all about the in-game purchases. Well, congratulations all of you naive fuckbats that either defended microtransactions or apologised for them, claiming they don't do any harm. Breakpoint is the game you fucking deserve. It's the proof that this shit just gets worse, month by month, game by game, unless you push back. Sadly, it is not the game the rest of us deserve. So if you are an apologist or supporter of microtransactions, you are ruining video games for those of us who aren't gullible cretins. And you really need to accept the fact that the video game community is better off without you in it. I'm not even kidding. If you defend microtransactions or think they're fine because you don't have to buy them, well, fuck off and play mobile games. Microtransactions and loot boxes are a fucking scourge, which are gradually destroying the art form we love and turning it into a fucking pedo cash showroom. Only consumer advocacy and protest will stop that. In fact, Breakpoint to a large degree can be defined as a fucking shop. It's a digital shop, with the game assets of a bunch of other Ubisoft video games mixed together and slapped all over it like a bad plastering job. I've only seen one YouTuber being glowingly positive about Breakpoint and encouraging gamers to buy it. And about 3 minutes into that video, they threw a disclaimer up on the screen saying, "This video was sponsored by Ubisoft." So yeah, I can say very meaningfully that the only YouTuber I saw claiming this was a good game was literally paid to lie about it. This said, I am fucking ashamed to admit, not everything in Breakpoint is entirely shit. Assaulting my first base, I got it. I understood the main hook of the game. You go in all keyboard operator as fuck, mimicking all that cool shit you see the professionals do on TV whilst you're sitting there in your fucking skiddies drinking beer and spilling it on your junk. This game has something very enjoyable at its core. Then again, if I poke a strawberry into a dog turd, that's got something very enjoyable at its core too. But the package as a whole is still less than appetising. Just like Ghost Recon Breakpoint. The strange thing about this game is that there were little enjoyable fun moments, scattered like chocolate sprinkles across the surface of the cesspit. I shouldn't really be surprised considering this game is a Frankenstein's monster of Ubisoft's assets. I should expect to find moments in the game where I'm liking it because it's made up of lots of bits of other Ubisoft games I enjoyed playing. The business model for Breakpoint was to grab some devs from Ghost Recon, The Division, Far Cry, Watch Dogs, Assassin's Creed and their monetization department. Make them bring all their off-the-shelf assets from those games, stick them in a room together and give them 3 months to combine their relative skills, knowledge and cookie-cutter digital assets into something that approximated a mutant hybrid of a game, in the loosest use of the term. I did like the bivouacking system in principle. Then again, I like the camp system in Red Dead Redemption 2. Clearly not as much as the developer that stole it for this game, but I liked it nevertheless. This being said, the bivouacking animation appears to be back to fucking front. You arrive at the campsite where some nice anonymous person has already lit a huge, ever-burning bonfire for you. Then when you set up camp, you stamp the fire out and put up a tent. What the fuck is going on? I certainly don't understand. Does anyone understand? Are these the warning beacons of fucking Gondor or something? And for the record, here is a little scientific factoid for you. Trying to put out a 3-foot wide raging bonfire by sticking your foot into it and wiggling it around is a mistake you are only going to be able to make once. Twice at a push if you manage to whittle yourself a pair of crutches. Then there is the stretched out animations that you can't seem to skip. They get tiresome very, very quickly. The body animations go weird and my hands always have some kind of strange scabby rash. Then I get food. Shake my bowl and it rattles like it's full of dried rice and pebbles. But then I reach in with my hand, not a spork or a spoon, my blotchy rash covered hand and pull out sloppy dog food. It looks almost as bad as my actual cooking, although you wouldn't really want to touch my cooking with your bare hands. Dear fucking Lord, match up your sound effects to your animations. All this fuckery aside, in principle, and despite its flaws, which are legion, I technically liked the bivouacking system. The RPG Lite perk system was okay. There were definitely a lot of must-have perks, so I'm not sure how much genuine build variation you're going to have, but it added another tier of depth to the game, albeit a bit of a cookie-cutter one. There are a lot of ways to technically break the game. Just grit your teeth and endure the artificially inflated grind. Save up and buy an LC4 coercion. This little puppy is my dream mobility scooter. It's covered in armour and sports a 40mm autocannon. It gets you from A to B, and when you get to B, you can murder everyone there with 40mm grenades. Just pull up, scout with your drone, let rip, and the only problem you are going to have is trying to choke back the tears and boo-hoos of remorse when you accidentally kill a civilian or three. Oh well. What's a little blue on blue between friends? Even the grown-up armies do it, so it must be fine. If you want to be an even bigger douche bunny, buy one of the attack helicopters and do the same, and you get a much better view of the carnage from 200 foot in the air. But even on a smaller scale, just equipping certain DMRs and swapping to the red dot on a dual scope, you basically have a single shot battle rifle about twice as powerful as any of the assault rifles on single shot. I'm not saying this mechanic is broken, what I'm saying is that most of the other assault rifles are a little underpowered. Anyway, my point is, there are a few techniques which, once stumbled upon, make most encounters in the game fairly easy, unless you screw the pooch. If you hear someone say, "I'm having fun in Breakpoint," then I can believe them, because there is legitimately good fun to be had. But fucking hell, if they stop the sentence there, then they must have their blinkers on, have extremely low expectations for what they think a video game should be, and a very high tolerance for microtransactional fist fucking. So what about the weapon balancing? I am not going to claim I entirely understand the weapon scaling and damage system in this game. A headshot from pretty much any weapon will one-shot kill an unprotected bonce, and most of my weapons seem to have stock damage for the whole time. They only seem to scale with level as they acquired various World of Warcraft magical secondary effects. There was also an in-game upgrading mechanic which buffed them up a little bit, which was nice. But I shit you not though, take what I say with a pinch of salt, because the befuddled user interface and shitty information displays, to me at least, led to some serious confusion. Not that it seemed to matter much. Grab any guns with handling that you like, stick on a silencer, and you're pretty much good to go. There were some Thailanderisms, weapon mags which hold more ammo but increase vertical recoil. Sorry, but negative traits like longer reload time I can buy into, but since when has a heavier magazine resulted in the gun flying further into the air when you fire it? That shit right there is reverse physics. Silencers and suppressors, yet again, reduce damage, which is complete bullshit. Just no, technically they increase heat, gas blowback in the operator's face, sometimes, wear and tear, sometimes, and can overheat, and sometimes they smoke, and sometimes they blow apart, but they never, ever reduce the velocity of a bullet. It's the same velocity or higher, for fuck's sake. They are, yet again, getting confused between suppressors and using subsonic ammunition with suppressors. We have 7.62 NATO rifles doing less damage than 5.56mm rifles. I had a DMR based on the M14, which was bolt action. What the actual fuck was that? The AK-74, which is supposed to be a 5.45 times 39 Soviet, was fucking chambered for 7.62 NATO, which is technically not impossible if it was rebarreled, I guess. But at one point every gun in the shop said 7.62 NATO, so I can't work out if some dev just got fucking high, or if it was yet another UI failure. I found 2 LMGs. I think it was the Stoner and the CTME, where the Stoner was twice the damage per bullet, but the CTME was higher level. Both blue weapons, both the same caliber. It didn't make fucking sense. It was nice to see some relative scaling done well, e.g. LMGs were more powerful than carbines of the same caliber, but this was offset by nonsense like the sniper rifle, which fired Lapua Magnum rounds, being treated like a fucking BB gun. Yeah, the same sniper rifle that once held the world record for the longest distance sniper kill ever. That BB gun. And yes, at the vendor, every single weapon was listed as 7.62. I mean, did they not have time to properly test and finish the game? That's a rhetorical question. Of course they didn't. They have a posh, fancy word for this shit these days. They call it games as a service. That's what fancy games companies use to describe unfucking finished. You guys should try this games as a service shit at work. Next time your boss asks you to do something, just do half of what he asks and fuck it up really badly, clock out 3 hours early and demand some overtime pay. When he asks you what the actual fuck is going on, just wink at him and say, "It's okay, boss. That's doing my job as a service." He will fire you for taking the piss, just like Ubisoft is taking the piss by rolling out this game in its current state. Look, I'm stupid, so I never fully realised what was going on with the weapon scaling, weapon upgrades and all that shite. I only managed a basic grasp of the mechanics. I couldn't really be asked to study it. But I will say this. Despite some people complaining that headshots usually one-shot kill anyone in the game apart from bosses, I liked the overall weapon feel in the game. I don't know the science, but I felt like the guns were deadly. And I think being shot in the head with a battle rifle should kill NPCs. I prefer assault rifles, and when I got one I liked, I could select single shot fire and feel confident it would do damage. Something just felt right, and most of the time it was the exact opposite of Bullet Spun City. In fact, I give the game some credit because I think you could just pick up a gun you like the feel of, never look at the stats, and still slaughter your enemies with a bit of guile and some semi-accurate fire without even looking at the small print. Some may hate that, but it's strangely realistic. I don't need to look at weapon statistics to know that if I pick up an M4 and shoot someone in the head at 200 yards, they're probably going to drop dead. And if I shoot them flat in the ballistic plate, they probably won't. And that right there felt absolutely spot on. On top of this, the variety and type of guns was better and more accurate than some other games. It's nice to see guns like the Bren, the FN pistol and the FN 2000. They're still treating PDWs like submachine guns, a classic Ubisoft blunder, but at least they got the caliber right, depending on which UI screen you were looking at. The weapons aren't perfect, but at least it's an improvement over previous Ubisoft titles, and indicates to me at least that the developers doing the design work aren't a bunch of West Coast gun-hating, wheatgrass smoothie-drinking pacifist fucks. Mostly. Pros and cons. So what are the pros and cons of Ghost Recon Breakpoint? Cons. It's a shambling mess, prefabricated by teams and then shoddily welded together by the lowest bidder. Literally everything in the game is for sale as a microtransaction. It has hourly time-limited microtransactions. Every vendor is a microtransaction vendor, even your fucking campfire. The story and the base of operations hub is totally contradictory and conflicts with the narrative. It's a repetitive, generic, cookie-cutter Ubisoft open-world RPG smear of cliches. It's an always-online shagfest, which even needs to download information to open a store page. It's damaged the credibility of the beloved actor John Bernthal. It's damaged the credibility of mumble rapper Lil Wayne. Yeah, maybe let's not overextend ourselves with that one. Pros: you don't have to pay for restocking ammunition with real money. Yet. Breakpoint validates everything I've been saying about Ubisoft for years. It might actually set a world record for combining the worst possible game with the worst amount of microtransactions. It's got auto-loot. In the final analysis, Breakpoint is primarily a bad game. It is literally the distillation of everything bad about Ubisoft. From the shitty time savers to the fact that it's built around a fucking digital shop. From the sinister anti-consumer practices to the mind-bogglingly incompatible choice of promotional partner. Breakpoint is a lazy, cheap Frankenstein of assets combined with literally the most severe kind of pay-to-win mechanics. Fuck, it's pay-to-complete the game mechanics. It's Ubisoft transforming into a mobile game distributor and perfecting its final form. It's like they sucked every shitty idea out of the heads of the shittiest executives they could find and distilled it into a game. A rather shit game. There have been an outpouring of memes about this game. Ghost Recon Failpoint, Breakpoint 76. Ghost Recon Breaking Point. There is literally more than I can list, and these insults exist for a good reason. Ghost Recon Breakpoint is the bastard offspring of Ubisoft's corporate vision. It's an abomination, which I'm blissfully elated that they made. I'm ecstatic that Breakpoint exists. Because finally everyone has definitive evidence that Ubisoft is precisely the bunch of sinister, cynical, amoral bastards that I have been saying they are for years. I'm not talking about ground level developers and designers who do the work and make the games. I'm talking about the executive managers, the public relations parasites and the marketing and sales department. I'm sure the average developer at Ubisoft feels as sold out as the rest of us by Ubisoft's current corporate strategy. They claim to have these high moral values, then make a shit game which is more microtransaction shop than adventure, use a rapper to promote it who pisses on their statements about equality and diversity, whilst trying to subtly censor their portfolio to make it compliant with Chinese government censors. I think it's fucking brilliant that Breakpoint exists, because it exposes Ubisoft's hypocrisy and vindicates my previous assertions concerning Ubisoft's sociopathic pursuit of profits. Ubisoft has always been a wolf in sheep's clothing. I feel like that guy who was abducted by aliens, who's been telling people for years he was anal probed on a spaceship, but nobody believed him at the time, and now the evidence is there for everyone to see. See, I did get my anus probed. Who's laughing now? There are issues of responsibility here too. Where does the line of responsibility fall? Leni Riefenstahl only glamorised the National Socialists by making epic movies about their rallies. How responsible was she on a scale of 1 to 10? Was she as guilty as the rest of the Nazis, or half as guilty? How the fuck do you put a figure on that? Are the people who covered up Rolf Harris's sexual abuse as guilty as the man himself? When it comes to overpriced, broken as shit video games full of microtransactions designed to target children in games with a baked-in no refunds policy, where do we draw the line for that responsibility? Who and by how much is responsible for this sorry AAA shitshow that we find ourselves in? Obviously, Ubisoft as a corporation has to own this shit 100%. The PR guys and community managers who lie about this shit, them too. Every fucking goon who ever defended microtransactions, sorry, but you helped this game happen too. You have to swallow at least a decent sized slice of this shit pie for being a games as a service microtransactional apologist. But there is another issue here. If I got approached to promote a product for money, I would do a little research first. I would at least do my best to make sure I was not encouraging my fans to buy a shit product. I would not want to sell out my supporters and do them harm. Lil Wayne took a big fat paycheck to promote this game. He managed to find the energy to show up, sit on a sofa and collect a big bag of money. Surely he had 5 minutes spare to check out exactly what he was endorsing. John Bernthal took a big fat paycheck to act in and promote this game. I'm sure he spent many hours rehearsing and filming to earn his big pile of cash. Surely he had 5 minutes to check out exactly what he was promoting. Surely if you take a paycheck to endorse a product and that product turns out to be a swindle that rips off your fans, you have to take some responsibility for that, right? Well, Ghost Recon Breakpoint has turned out to be a fucking stinking mess. This game is more broken than a wheelchair that's been thrown under a fucking tram. Yet John Bernthal was on Twitter not long ago, doing more follow-up promotion on his personal Twitter account, posting Breakpoint vids and bragging about his oath scene. When our heroes promote bullshit for money, we need to hold them accountable for that. Maybe it's time we started to judge Ubisoft's promotional partners by the same standards we apply to anyone else selling us defective products. If these guys want to act like those pricks on infomercials, then they should be afforded the same level of respect. Corporations like to create an image of themselves like they are our friends, and that they have morals and values just like you and me. That's why Yves Guillemot gets up on stage all the time and says fluffy things about fifis and loving players, so you mentally form an affection with Ubisoft, like it's a grey-haired friendly fella who cares about you.
I believe video games have a positive impact on all of us. At Ubisoft, our intention is to create games that will make you stronger and happier in your life. When you play Ubisoft games, we hope you will spend quality time with family and friends and meet new inspiring people. You push us to always do better and go further. So to everyone who plays our games, thank you for your love.
The reality is, of course, that he's a greedy bastard who runs a huge corporation with one value: getting richer at your expense. Friendly, my arse. He peddles gambling to kids, runs a quasi-legal PR operation and censors his games for China, the most oppressive regime on earth. The video games are a means to an end, not an end in itself. If he really was into video games more than money, then he wouldn't be telling shareholders that he doesn't give a fuck about making new games and he's going to focus on recycling old shit and put all of the effort into microtransactions and loot boxes. He can say what he likes on stage at E3, but in the shareholder literature he is spelling it out. Pedo caches and microtransactions are win, in his opinion. Video games are a hassle to make. Ghost Recon Breakpoint is the future of Ubisoft's strategy, recycling IPs and assets instead of creating original video games. And if this is their future, then Ubisoft's future is fucked. I know some people will think I made a big deal of this whole issue and Ubisoft's ideologically confused association with mumble rap, but my point is this. This month, Blitzchung, the Hearthstone champion, was fined, banned, and the presenters on the show were sacked because he expressed solidarity for Hong Kong protesters. And nearly all AAA companies are self-censoring, banning and sacking people so they can fall in line with and comply by China's totalitarian mandates. They are ignoring the values they claim to promote for the sake of money, and they're doing it without fucking hesitation. Ubisoft is not alone. but as bad as any of them. They nag on all the time about values, but when they see money and profits, their values don't mean shit. They fucking evaporate. The second they smell profits, they betray the fact that their only value is making money, and everything else is a lie. They censor their games to comply with Chinese market regulations and give not one fuck about China's human rights abuses as long as they keep doing business. And here's the biggest irony. By having Lil Wayne as promotional partner, they sold out many of their customers' values and their own employees' values. And Lil Wayne sold himself out too. Because now Lil Wayne, king of the eye spaffers, is selling out to a corporation that airbrushes out black characters in video games. Because the Chinese market doesn't like to see black faces in their films and video games. Ubisoft is a private corporation, so they can have any values they fucking like. It's their company. Lil Wayne can rap about spunking wherever he likes. It's his winky. Their values and his ejaculations are luckily not my concerns. However, when it comes to credibility and treating your customers and employees with respect and integrity, Ubisoft can't pretend to be this and promote their products with this just to make lots of this without being exposed as being this. Ubisoft's hypocrisy is perfectly illustrated in this Ubisoft Reflection Studio promotional video, where they profess to bringing their brothers and sisters closer together. But I'm pretty skilled at perving on girls, and this shitty video looks like a sausage fest to me. It's a room full of geezers. Oh yeah, but there are two girls behind the fucking bar, serving the drinks. Enjoy your pint, mate. Ghost Recon Breakpoint is the absolute worst fucking game I have begrudgingly had a little bit of fun playing. It's fucking dreadful in so many ways, but somewhere under all the shit there is at least something redeeming about the game. I think to some degree it's the spiritual successor to the Division 1, a broken pile of fuck that still had some indiscernible quality that made it likeable despite its myriad of flaws. And so it should be. Because let's be honest here, most of the developers that should have been working on fixing and creating content for the Division 2 were most likely moved off to work on this game. Yeah, I said it. But for now, good luck and happy hunting.